CBS News. This is CBS.
Tonight, former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis fighting to stay alive as she battles untreatable cancer.
Tonight, he was the head coach for the Whalers, but Pierre Maguire is looking for a new job.
Tonight, the Seawolf submarine finds a permanent home in Connecticut, and it means at least 1,000 jobs headed this way. Now, Eyewitness News NightBEAT.
Live from WFSB, Channel 3. You're watching Eyewitness News NightBEAT.
Good evening, I'm Don Lark.
And I'm Denise DeCenzo, and what's happening tonight is a vigil for a former First Lady who has shown America great courage and dignity. Jackie Kennedy Onassis is said to be resting comfortably in her New York apartment as she battles untreatable lymph cancer. Senator Edward Kennedy told reporters tonight that Mrs. Onassis is enormously grateful to all of the people who have sent notes wishing her well. Reporter Nanette Hansen is live on New York's Upper East Side with the very latest for us tonight. Nanette?
Well into the evening, friends and family members continue to pay visits to the Onassis family home here in New York City. It was just this past Sunday that the former First Lady was seen and photographed in Central Park, and the sudden worsening of her condition came as a shock and a surprise to the entire nation. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis was resting at home today, surrounded by her family inside, a mass of reporters outside. Senator Ted Kennedy and William Kennedy Smith arrived tonight. Nephew Joe Kennedy was among the relatives arriving this morning. Children John and Caroline were already inside, managing to escape the camera's lens. Mrs. Onassis was released from a New York hospital Wednesday afternoon at her own request. The following statement coming from longtime friend and spokeswoman Nancy Tuckerman. The disease has progressed and there is nothing they can do for her. She will not have any further treatment. President and Mrs. Clinton are among those sending best wishes.
Harry and I have been in touch with Mrs. Onassis in the last several days and are getting regular updates. She's been quite wonderful to my wife and to my daughter and to all of us, and we're thinking about them, praying for them.
The 64-year-old former First Lady has been fighting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma since January, a cancer that typically strikes people in their 60s and 70s. It attacks tissue in the lymphatic system, an important component of the body's immune system. Mrs. Onassis has been hospitalized 3 times since news of her illness became public, the most recent complications prompting the most concern.
She obviously is very, very sick. There's a lot of members of the family that have gathered to be with her, and it's obviously it's a very difficult time for Jackie and for the family, and I think we all just wish her a great deal of love.
Many onlookers were outraged at the media attention focused on the gravely ill former First Lady. Those close to Mrs. Onassis had hoped returning home would give her as much privacy in this phase of her illness as possible. That seems unlikely. Mrs. Onassis was given the Catholic rite for the dying by a local priest earlier this afternoon. But upon leaving her apartment this evening, Senator Ted Kennedy told reporters that he's looking forward to seeing Jackie tomorrow. Reporting live from New York, Nanette Hansen, CBS News. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Nanette. Well, the disease that has stricken Mrs. Onassis, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, is one of the fastest growing cancers, but it's also one of the most curable. It's a cancer of the lymphatic system. The system is responsible for processing white blood cells, which in turn bolster the body's immune system. Now, the lymphatic system is composed of lymph nodes throughout the body, including the neck, underarms, and groin, and the spleen. Lymphoma can spread to many other organs, including the liver, lungs, stomach, and brain. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma typically strikes people over the age of 50.
Well, we know that President Kennedy's widow has always gone to great lengths to protect her privacy, and Senator Edward Kennedy says the family is trying to respect that tonight. He spoke with reporters earlier this evening.
All members of the family love her very deeply. We wanted to be here this evening. Had a good chance. She's resting comfortably. Had a good chance to talk to John and Caroline, and I think everyone wants to respect her privacy and her feelings.
Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis first disclosed her cancer condition this past February.
Well, most people in Connecticut who know Jackie Kennedy Onassis did not want to talk about her life at this point.
But even among people who never met her, she had a powerful impact here. NightBEAT reporter Sean Comey continues our team coverage.
The usual welcoming committee presents Mrs. Kennedy with a bouquet of red roses.
In the best of times, in the worst of times.
It's official now. The president is dead.
Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis will be remembered as a very private person living a very public life. Part of that life spent in Farmington, where then Jacqueline Bouvier attended Miss Porter's school in the late 1940s.
She's someone who, by her distinction, it certainly is a credit to the school, and someone who we are pleased to have been associated with. She's been a very private person, and we have always respected her privacy.
She jealously guarded that privacy over the years, but had to endure the spotlight, even when tragedy touched her life again, when her second husband, Aristotle Onassis, died. If you come to the library trying to find out about Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and you look her up in the encyclopedia, you might think that she never existed, because there's no listing under her name. To find out anything about her life, you have to look up one of her husbands. But that's the way many people will remember her.
She was the wife of a very great president. She was a great and gracious lady herself. She did wonderful things for the White House. And I think she acquitted herself admirably throughout some extraordinarily difficult times.
Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, a woman of style and substance who lives on in the thoughts and prayers of those who knew her and those who were inspired by her example. Sean Comey, Channel 3 Eyewitness News on the Night Beat.
We've taken at least a dozen phone calls tonight from people who were looking for a way to express their feelings about the former First Lady. Some folks in Hartford's Zion Street area decided to light some candles and put them in their windows. We've been told of similar gestures being made in other parts of Connecticut tonight as well. Here's a quick recap of the events surrounding Jackie Onassis' illness and the status. Tonight she is suffering from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a form of cancer. Tonight she is said to be resting comfortably in her New York City apartment. Her children and other family members have stopped at her bedside tonight. A priest administered last rites to Mrs. Onassis this afternoon. Doctors say there's nothing more they can do for her. She will not have any further treatment.
The mayors of Connecticut's largest cities tonight are demanding help from the state in the battle against crime, and they're calling for action this special session. Besides gun control, they want more money for the Safe Neighborhoods program, more youth programs for the summer, and they want the Mohegan Casino money to be earmarked for the cities. With the crisis of crime in our cities now even attacking at the front doors of our courthouses, what can be done to ensure public safety there? Well, today a summit meeting on court security looked for ways to keep the criminals in check when they get their day in court. Channel 3's Brian Garnett has the story.
It's come to this, the police having to patrol even in front of the state's courts, supposed to be the end of a crime, not the beginning. But twice this month, gang gunfire has exploded just outside Connecticut courthouses. In response to a summit meeting of court officials, police, and sheriffs, suggesting that police begin walking beats in front of the state's courthouses.
You're talking about a criminal element, and if you do have a show of force, which could conceivably be only a beat officer, that would probably be enough for them to refrain from any kind of illegal behavior in our courts.
May 2nd, a 15-year-old gang member thinks nothing of shooting a rival in front of the Bristol Court Police Complex in broad daylight. Just last Friday, another gang confrontation leads to another shooting at the Hartford Courthouse. While you can't restrict who can come to a public courthouse, what the summit suggests could be done is to control and limit the number of criminal defendants who are brought together here on any one day. In addition to the police beat controlling who's on the court docket aimed at the gangs.
We attempted about 2.5 years ago in Hartford to keep different gang members off the docket on the same day.
The summit also calling for courts to develop operational plans of what to do if violence breaks out, do a security review outside the court buildings, improve communication, especially with police, giving sheriffs radios, bringing the police in on court security planning, and reviewing restrictions on even police carrying guns in courtrooms.
I think I can assure those individuals and jurors and others who use the courts that the interior of the courts are in fact safe.
But the gangs are still menacing outside the courts, while those at the summit are now trying to find the money to pay for a police presence here. Brian Garnett, Channel 3 Eyewitness News, Hartford.
And police are still looking for the prime suspect in the Hartford courthouse shooting. 17-year-old Renee Almodovar, believed to be a member of the Latin Kings gang, is wanted in the shooting and wounding of a rival gang member on the sidewalk outside the courthouse last week.
At the state capitol, House lawmakers today approved a bill that would create a new state agency to recommend ideas for reforming the health care system in Connecticut. The bill would create the Office of Health Care Access, which would be responsible for developing a plan to ensure universal coverage. 2 children bit by a squirrel with rabies in Coventry are undergoing a series of painful shots and refocusing attention on the potentially deadly virus. The children were attempting to treat the squirrel for an injury when it turned on them. Coventry leads the state in the cases of rabies reported since it began spreading through Connecticut 3 years ago. To help prevent the spread of rabies, shots are recommended for pets. Connecticut's Veterinary Association is offering low-cost vaccination clinics around the state next month. For more information, you can call 561-1911. We'll repeat that number for you a little later on.
Well, it's another rainy night in southern New England, but our weather fortunes may finally start to change tomorrow. Hilton has details in your first forecast from the Channel 3 New England Weather Service. Hilton.
Don, Denise, every night this week, even with the help of a magnifying glass, we haven't been able to see any hope for sunshine for the next day until tonight. Let's go to the maps. I'll show you what we're looking at for tonight, and it's a cloudy night with some rain around, and overnight lows again on the cool side, readings in the 40s from the low to mid-40s in southern New England. Tomorrow, we start off cloudy, but it brightens up during the day and warms up. We had 50s today. Tomorrow, well into the 60s with some sunshine by tomorrow afternoon. Won't be a completely sunny day, but an improvement over what we've had. Don, Denise?
Yes, it'll be very welcome. Thanks, Hilton.
Still to come on the Night Beat, tennis star Jennifer Capriati checks herself into a drug rehab center. We'll have the story.
It was built in Connecticut, and that's where the Seawolf submarine will stay. A decision that means at least 1,000 jobs are on the way. We'll have the details in tonight's cover story.
The Whalers are looking for a new coach now that Pierre Maguire has been let go. Dave tells us why later in sports.
Plus, wait till you see the end result when a garbage truck lost its brakes and went barreling down a hill. We'll show you how it finally stopped when we come back.
Channel 3 Eyewitness News. The news most people turn to first.
State police tonight are tracking one of 2 jail inmates who broke away from custody in Danbury today while being led into a lockup area at the courthouse there.
This morning about 9:30, there was a prisoner transport van bringing 6 prisoners into the back of the Danbury court. And as the prisoners were getting off the van, one of the sheriffs was pushed, and the 2 prisoners were able to escape through a back gate and flee the area on foot.
Both men were facing burglary and larceny charges. Jose Acosta has been picked up. The other man, Jose Alvalier, remains on the run. He may still have a handcuff on his left wrist, and he was wearing a T-shirt with the words Bridgeport Correction Center across the front.
Tennis star Jennifer Capriati voluntarily enters a drug rehab center. It's one of the stories making news around America tonight. Capriati was arrested at a Florida motel Monday, charged with possession of marijuana. A former Connecticut man was among the 2 other people arrested with her. Tom Wineland, formerly of New Milford, says Capriati had been using stronger drugs. Capriati's lawyer declined to comment. Meanwhile, a judge in Litchfield has issued a re-arrest warrant for Wineland on a charge of violating probation. Tennis player Monica Seles, who was stabbed in the back at a tournament in Hamburg last year, is suing the German Tennis Foundation. Seles is seeking at least $10 million in damages, blaming the attack on poor security. The 8-time Grand Slam winner hasn't played a tournament since that stabbing. A close call today in Scranton, Pennsylvania. A garbage truck loses its brakes coming down a hill and slams into another truck. That truck then crashed into a diner. Both truck drivers were injured, but no one in the diner was hurt.
On the NightBEAT Business Watch, Connecticut builders are picking up the pace of new home construction in Connecticut. 775 housing permits were issued last month, and while that number's off almost 10% from the same time last year, it's an increase of more than 30% from the month before. Solomon Kirchner will be one of several partners in the casino proposed by Connecticut's Mohegan tribe in Montville. He's the man who brought casino gambling to South Africa. The stock market marches on, the Dow Jones notching a 26-point gain today to run more than 80 points ahead on the week so far.
Excuse me, I'm being told in my ear we're going to go now to a special report, CBS News.
For many Americans, her finest hour came in the aftermath of her husband's assassination. Her dignity, poise, strength, and grace during that horrifying time in many ways carried an entire nation through the tragedy. After that, Jacqueline Kennedy retreated from the public eye. In 1968, she married Greek shipping tycoon Aristotle Onassis. Onassis died in 1975. In her later years, as a book editor for Doubleday and as a grandmother, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis maintained an intensely private life. There will be more about the death of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis later on this CBS station. Dan Rather, CBS News, New York.
And we'll be back with more news in just a moment.